Good morning, friends. Thank you for coming. I'll be honest with you, up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago maybe, I was feeling pretty unsure about our day. But folks come through. It's a great looking group. So thankful you're here. And I hope we can have a blessed day in our workshop. I will not spend a lot of time introducing Stephen. He does have a wife named Emily. He's got 4 kids, which he and Emily are very proud of, like we would all be. And it just had spring break. Just had spring break. Came back, as you can see, in one piece. Met with Stephen on a couple occasions, and I asked a few of you to meet with us the second time and just get a feel for Stephen. And I had shared a lot about this group. And Stephen has a passion, an extreme passion for developing disciples. You can tell that through his conversations. He has earned an MDiv and a D-Min in Young Adult Leadership Development, I think was your D-Min. And he went through Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. He does this leadership development workshop that we'll have today. There'll be a leadership development track. He'll probably talk about where we've been, and if it's like I think it's going to be, where we've been and where we need to go. He will talk about developing the people of God, deploying them and instruments of how God wants us to do things. We'll further go into engaging and empowering young adults into the ministry, young adult leadership, discipleship, mentoring, you being mentors, because I'll be honest with you, we don't have a lot of young adults here today. So you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to be mentors. I'm swearing all of y'all in to be ministers. I'm affirming all of y'all in to be ministers right now. Go back and be mentors to these groups. Teach the young adults, in effective ways and equipping them to go forward. And we'll do a workshop. We'll have a little lunch. Then we'll do some more this afternoon. Folks, just like I said a while ago, it's just like watching a movie or a program. If you don't come back on the 15th, you're not going to get the little ending. You're not going to know what it's all about. It's going to be hard to go back and develop young adult leadership in your meetings. So without saying any more, Stephen, please come and have a freedom in this place to share God's will.
Well, it's great to see you all. As Mike said, my name is Stephen, and I am very, very excited to be here for a number of reasons. One of those is that the things that Mike and others have shared with me about you all have been very encouraging. Very, very encouraging. The way that he shared about what's happening in your meetings, and it's happened. I mean, the rich history represented in this room is tremendous when I think about it. As someone that loves the state of North Carolina, now to be clear, I like Terry, I don't love North Carolina, right, necessarily, but I love the state of North Carolina, very, very much so. And I've called it home for most of my life, and I think about the history of the Friends in the state of North Carolina. And I'm very, very thankful. As a minister myself, I'm thankful for the work that you've done, that those that have come before you have done in this great state, for the good of all, but also for the glory of God and for the furthering of His kingdom. And I'm very, very grateful for the work that you're continuing to do as well. And I'm thankful to be here today. I just want to introduce myself a little bit as well. I know Mike did also already, but sometimes pictures help me because I'm a pretty visual person. And so that's a picture of me and my family. It's dated a little bit. And ironically, I'm wearing the exact same thing as I was that day. But that was my family a couple of years ago, actually, a little over 2 years ago. And so my 4 kids range from today, age 14, By the time we meet next, I'll have a 5-year-old, but today she's 4. And so we range from 4 to 14, the 4 children that we have. Over the last couple of years, they've grown quite a bit. My wife's gotten more beautiful, and I think I've stayed the same. That's what I'm hoping for. And so, but that's my family and I. I'm just so you know a little bit, we're talking about some generational dynamics over the next couple meetings together. But so you know where I'm coming from. I'm 40 years old, okay? And so some would say I sit right in the middle, watching what's unfolding in our world today. Right? You used to say 40's over the hill, but I feel like it's gotten a little bit higher now. I think 50 maybe is the new 40, I don't know. But I'm 40 years old. A little bit of my own journey. I did grow up here in North Carolina. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and lived there the majority of my life. Spent 4 years in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've met a couple of NC State fans already today, but my wife and I both went to North Carolina State University. We were there for 4 years, moved back to Winston-Salem, where I served as a minister at a church in Winston-Salem for about 12 years. During that time, I actually had the chance to work with Jeff Barnes a little bit in the FCA at Winston-Salem State in particular. I was very thankful for the time that I got to serve with Jeff and the work that he was doing during those days, and still continues to. Some as well. I'm thankful for that. And so served that church for about 12 years. My family and I received a call and moved to the Nashville, Tennessee area in 2017, where we lived and served for about 4 years. And in 2021, just over 2 years ago, we moved back to Winston-Salem again, which is home for both of us. Feels like home in so many ways. And so we're really thankful for that. I'm passionate about a couple things. One of those is my family, right? It's the reason it's the only picture you're going to see today, all right, is my family, because I love them dearly. They are at the heart of all that I get to do in life, even ministry that I get to be a part of. I believe if not for the encouragement and the support and the participation of my family, my ministry is meaningless in so many ways. And so I'm very, very thankful and passionate about my family. My wife, we've been married for about 18 years, and I'm very, very thankful for each of them. I'm also passionate, all right, just so you know a little bit about me. I'm very passionate about sports. I absolutely love sports. I grew up playing as many sports as I possibly could. As I was growing up, I actually anticipated playing and coaching one of those sports for the rest of my life. It's all I ever wanted to do. The Lord rerouted my path as a senior in high school. Before I signed my name on the dotted line, about a week before, I just sensed this overwhelming movement of the Lord in my life to take a step in a different direction, and changed my direction. Wasn't sure what direction that was. I just knew it wasn't this, and ended up very, very thankfully now today continuing to love and enjoy sports. So I'm an enthusiast. I did go to NC State, so I'm an NC State fan. A little disappointed this morning with our loss yesterday. Is there anybody in the room that's a Creighton fan by chance? Okay, good. I won't have to hold that against anybody. Anybody a Purdue fan? Really? I am so sorry. But we all got to watch history unfold yesterday, and that was great. So that's right. Are you a Fairleigh Dickinson fan, or are you just not for Purdue necessarily? Okay, gotcha. Fair enough. I'm glad we can be honest in here. That's good. That's going to make today a whole lot better. But no, I do. I love sports. And so this is my favorite time of year, just to be honest with you. This is my favorite weekend of the year. And in many ways, it was spring break for my family this past week. We went and visited. It was 85 degrees in Florida where I was visiting my parents on a week ago today. All right. And so today is very different outside here. But very, very thankful to be here today. And really, I love this season. The third thing I'll say that I'm passionate about before we jump in is I'm passionate about the church and what we would call the head of the church, Jesus. I'm passionate about Jesus and his church. I believe those two things can't be separate, right? If you love Jesus, you love his church. You can't love his church apart from loving Jesus, which is why moments like this today matter a lot to me, because I believe in the local church. At the core of who I am, I believe that the church is God's primary means of making disciples of all the nations. And if you think about it, all the nations sounds like a really far off idea. But this nation's a part of that. And this state is a part of that. And the places where you meet on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, are a part of that. And so today matters to me because I believe at the core of who I am that Jesus and His church ought to be primary for all of us. And it's a great need that our world has. And so I'm excited to be here today to be able to talk about some of those things with you. And here's what I want to do, actually. We're going to spend a decent amount of time today getting to learn from one another. All right? I really do believe that the people sitting around you today have probably more to offer than at times we might think. We all have so much to offer based on our experiences, our perspectives, right? Moments that have been really great in our lives and moments that have been really challenging in our lives. Right? We learn from one another and through those experiences. And so today, throughout our time together, both this morning and this afternoon, you're going to spend some time around your tables talking with one another. All right, talking with one another about the ideas that we're working through today. And actually to start our time, I actually want to move you toward your tables for just a moment, okay? And here's what I want you to do. If we can, I think we're in pretty good shape, but I'd love for there to be 4, we've got a couple tables of 3. I think we're just going to make it work because having you move would probably be more challenging than it's worth, okay? So right at your tables, I know some of the tables is going to take you a little bit longer to work through questions as we do this during the day, but at your tables, here's what we're going to do. Just to get started, I know most of you probably know one another a little bit, or maybe very well. I don't know. Either way, at your tables, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to share your name, your hometown, so where you're originally from, where you currently live, and then 2 questions I want you to talk about for about 5 minutes. What motivated you to be here today, and what are your expectations for today? Okay? I want you to go ahead and metaphorically put that on the table, all right, as we get started today. So you'll go ahead right now, you'll get around your tables, you don't have to move at all. Everybody just stay where you're at. And then here's what I need you to do, okay? I need you to go ahead and designate a spokesperson for the day. If you want to do 2, one for the morning and one for the afternoon, that's okay as well. All right, we're all adults in the room. We can make grown-up decisions, all right? So if you want 2, that's okay with me. All right, but designate at least one spokesperson for the day because throughout the time together, we're going to have the opportunity to present some of the things that you talk around your tables because, again, you're going to hear it directly from one another. I think it's good for us to hear it as a whole where we can as well. All right? So 5 minutes, we'll start now. I want to answer these 2 questions at the bottom, but make sure everybody knows one another as well. All right? All right, we'll get started. All right, take 1 minute, one more minute to finish up. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. I did go to NC State, so counting's not my strength.
Carolina, we understand.
Fair enough,
Both
right?
my brothers went there. I understand.
One for each person. Yep.
But my brothers went there, so I understand.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, let's bring it back together. I saw a lot of smiles around tables, and I like that, right? When you get a chance to hear from each other, I think it's always good. Like I said, we're going to do that throughout the morning. I did put enough of these, I hope, on each table. We got enough on each table for each person. Really what you'll find in here is a lot of room to take notes, okay? And I'm going to give kind of some headings to the first few pages, but primarily what you'll find is notes. Hopefully you'll find opportunity to write some things down throughout the day. I'm a firm believer that if you hear it and you see it and you write it, your chances of remembering it are much higher. All right? And so at the core, I want you to walk out of here today with some things to hold on to and remember and begin working on. So hopefully everybody should have one of those. If you have a table that doesn't have enough, just let me know. We'll make sure everybody's got one. All right, so I would like to hear from two different tables. So your spokesperson at your table to share with us the answer to that first question that's there. What motivated you to be here today? Maybe share two different things from your group of what motivated you to be here today. Who would volunteer to go first? I don't mind helping you volunteer if I need to. All right, but I'd love for you to have the chance to volunteer first.
I started off.
All right, let's hear it.
Range changed, but it was to be to encourage and equip whether it was children, teens, young adults, or young families to find their passion and call into church.
Wonderful. So equip them to find their passion and calling to come to church. Fantastic. One other table. Yes. Thank you, Paul.
Hi, I'm Lisa. We're here from Deep Creek Friends, and our motivation today was to the leadership training part of it. I've kind of already called myself a mentor to our young adults at church, or their big sister. So expectations, learning a little bit more about the leadership part and bringing the young adults in and finding their place in the church to kind of keep it going for the future.
Fantastic. Just by raise of hands, any similar thoughts around your tables of either of these? Anybody have similar thoughts? Great. Great motivation. I'm so encouraged by the desire among you. To continue not just to grow the size of meetings, but to actually connect with the next generation in such a way that shows them the great things that many of you have experienced in your days as it relates to your meetings and what the Lord's done. And so I'm very encouraged by that. Similarly, let's do this. Two different tables to share with us what your expectations are for today. Who would share that? And there may be some crossover here. Yep.
Learn as much as we can of how to do this and listen to you, and just wanted to be here among our friends to do whatever we can to help. Great posture to have, right? We come to learn. It's a great place to be.
Some ideas that we came up with were we were looking for ideas to carry back to our meeting about growth and participation and in different age groups in our meetings and trying to grow the meeting overall.
It's great. Any similar thoughts around your tables of both of those things to learn, opportunities for growth in those demographics? Great. Well, let me share with you a couple of goals that I've got for today for us as well. The first is this, is that I do hope that you can leave better equipped and more confident to invest in your meetings generally, right? Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are in no ways only applicable to a younger generation. My hope is that generally, right, on a large scale, across the board with everybody in your meetings, that you are leaving here today better equipped, more confident to invest in the folks around you. I think one of the things we often struggle with is, even at times when we have tools, we struggle to be confident in how to use them. Right, I can remember as a kid when my dad was very handy and still is, and he had all kinds of tools. Right? And his number one rule to me was anything I used, I had to put back the way that I found it. Right? And as a kid, I was not very good at that, so I got in trouble quite a bit. But what I always often found, it was interesting to me, when I saw a tool as a kid, I couldn't wait to put my hands on it, even if I had no idea how to use it. But the older I've gotten, what I found is I'm much more cautious. Right? If I get a new tool for a project that I'm doing at my home, I often find myself a little bit slower in opening it, a little bit more patient at reading the instructions, because I don't have necessarily a high degree of confidence that I'm going to be able to take it out of the box and put it to work. Sometimes we have tools in our hands, and I would suspect that many of you have tools for investing in people, for investing in the next generation, for training the next generation, for discipling the next generation, but you're struggling in ways maybe to be confident how to use those tools, right? So I want you to leave not just better equipped, but also more confident to invest in your meetings. The second goal that I've got for our time together today, for you to have some clear next steps to take in order to invest in your meetings. Some clear next steps, right? If you walk out of here with ideas, with a lot of questions around next steps, right, there's going to be a cloud around you, a bit of a fog. And I want you to be able to walk out with some clear next steps. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, and Mike's already alluded to this is a two-part seminar, right? And so what we'll do today is we're going to work through a number of things, and I'm going to give you some very clear next steps to take over the next 4 weeks. Right? But the larger steps that I'm going to be encouraging and hopefully equipping you to take in the coming months and years are going to come out of part 2 in April. Okay? And so know today there will be some clear next steps, and I want to make sure you've got those as you leave. And the third goal is this: to be reminded that it is good for us to be together and that we can learn from one another. Right? It is good for us to be together. How many of you agree with that? It is good for us to be together. It's very, very good for us to be together, and we can learn from one another. And you're going to find throughout the day that you actually are learning from one another. Some of the greatest lessons I've ever learned in my life are things that people shared with me that I thought, I'm never going to do that. We learn from one another in a lot of different ways. It may be that you hear things today and go, that's not for me. That's okay. It may be that you hear things from one another today and you're inspired and encouraged and excited to move on to these clear next steps. Either way, we can learn a lot from one another, and I want to make sure that we're able to do that today. Okay? And so how are we going to do this? How are we going to try to accomplish these 3 things? Well, the first thing I want to introduce you to is just a philosophy thing when it comes to equipping sessions like this, workshops like this. From a philosophical perspective, I believe very, very deeply in the power of questions. In the power of questions. Right? Think about how questions in your own life experience have completely redirected your path or shaped your life. All right? Some of you in this room either asked or have been asked the question, will you marry me? Anybody in this room ever been on one side or the other of that question? Yeah. That it impact your life in some way? Oh yeah. Hopefully for the better. In my life, it was certainly for the better. You think about times when maybe you've heard somebody ask the question in your career, what are you willing to do to get to where you want to be? Anybody ever asked you that question in your vocation, in your career? Right? The power of questions. Right? Questions often don't just impact us in an inspirational way. Sometimes they also do a good job of helping kind of lodge some things in our brain so that we remember. All right, let me ask you a question that I bet most of you know the answer to. When there's something strange in your neighborhood, who are you going to call? Right? Questions, they stick with us. Right? Can you handle the truth? You can't handle the truth. Right? Questions often resonate with us in great and helpful ways. One of my favorite movies of all time is a movie by the name of Field of Dreams. Do you remember, right, when Kevin Costner was a kid, or rather, he's with his kid, right? And his son asks him a question. Hey, Dad, want to have a catch? What changed? Everything about their lives. They went out into the field, they built a baseball field, and you know the rest of the story if you're familiar with the film. Right? Questions have an incredible power, but not just in culture and not just in our lives. Throughout the Bible, actually, we see the power of questions. Right? In Acts chapter 9, if you're familiar with what happens in Acts chapter 9, you have a man by the name of Saul, who we would later come to know as Paul. Right? And he's on his way to a place called Damascus. And he hears a voice without seeing the source of the voice. And the voice asks him a question. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That moment changed Saul's life. That question changed everything about Saul. Jesus with his disciples, and he looks at one of his dearest, who often had a tendency of putting his foot in his mouth. He says, "Who do you say that I am?" We see it even in the Bible that there is this use of questions to shape things. Why does this happen? Because when we become honest through answering questions, whether they seem theoretical or they're actually tangible answers to the questions, these questions often require us to think internally about our own hearts, our own minds, our own hopes, our own dreams, our own experiences. And oftentimes questions lead us then to do things that we may have never imagined that we would do. Questions can have an incredible positive influence on the trajectory that we go in life. They can have a very challenging or negative influence on the trajectory that we go in life. Either way, questions have a power in the world. And so today, throughout the time that we've got together, we are going to try to answer 3 questions. Okay? We're going to spend our time trying to answer these 3 questions, and you'll see those at the top of the first 3 sections in the note sheets that you have there in front of you. Answering these 3 questions, I hope, will reveal some things to us that I believe will help your meetings to take some clear next steps as we look ahead at what it looks like to connect with, to develop, to invest in, to raise up the next generation. So we're going to answer these 3 questions in a number of different ways and formats. You're going to answer some of these questions together around your tables. We're going to answer them largely as a group and discuss together. We're going to answer some of them just simply by me sharing with you some of the things that I've drawn from and resources that I've looked at myself, but also in some of the research that I've done myself over the last several years as well. And so we're going to talk about some of these things together. And so before we go any further, though, I want to give you some ground rules for today. Okay? Because when you're dialoguing together with one another, when we're dialoguing together as a group, as a whole, even when you're listening, I want to make sure that the ground is level for us, that we all are here with a right understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay? The first is vulnerability. All right? I want you to be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with. I don't want to force vulnerability never ends well. All right? If you've ever been in a small group meeting, maybe a Bible study with somebody, and they put you on the spot and they forced you to say something and then kept digging and prying, maybe trying to get some more out of you, right? It gets a little uncomfortable. We don't want forced vulnerability, All right? But vulnerability is important. And so today I want to encourage you, be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with, and then make sure as well you respect the decisions of others in this room today with their desire of how vulnerable they want to be. Okay? There's no right or wrong in this in terms of how vulnerable you want to be. Okay? That's up for everybody to decide. So vulnerability is the first ground rule. The second is grace. If you've got a relationship with the Lord, you've experienced the grace of God. Which means you understand grace better than anybody else in the world does. So as the Lord has been gracious to you, be gracious to others, right? Let's do that toward one another today. And then the third ground rule is this, is really about expectations, but it's a process, okay? This is a process. Remember that the process of arriving at helpful conclusions and solutions, it often requires you to go through seasons of chaos, of maybe confusion, maybe frustration, maybe disappointment, okay? No, if you feel that way at some point today, you're normal, all right? You're normal if you feel that way at some point along the way today or in a few weeks when we meet again, okay? So that's some ground rules for today, all right? Be vulnerable, be gracious, and finally, let's make sure that we remember that this is a process. So, ready to jump in? All right, the first question is this, and you can fill this in at the top of that first page. Who are we? All right, who are we? So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to get back into your groups for just a moment here, and I'm going to give you 3 questions, okay? Vulnerability, opportunity for it's going to happen quickly, all right? These first 3 questions are going to give you a chance to share a little bit about your own heart, your own faith journey with one another. And I will tell you, at the end of the day, I hope this makes even more sense, but this is an important part of the process, okay? It's an important part of the process for us to do a little bit of introspection, thinking about our own relationship with the Lord, our own faith journey, all right? And so you're going to get to your tables, around your tables again, give you 5 minutes. This one might bleed into more like 7 minutes. I'm going to kind of gauge it on how you're doing at your tables, but these are the 3 questions I want you to ask around your tables. Again, I want to make sure, let's get a spokesperson for each table. We're going to hear a little bit more from more people as we go along today. 3 questions are this. What is exciting to you about your relationship with God? All right, this is a present tense question. We're asking this question about where you're at right now. What is exciting to you about your relationship with God? Second question, how would someone know that faith is an important part of your life? How would someone know that faith is an important part of your life? And then the third question, what is it about your faith journey that you would like for others to know? What is it about your faith journey that you would like for others to know? All right? Before I dismiss you into your groups, any questions good for the whole? All right. Wonderful. Remember, vulnerability, grace, process. All right? Keep them in mind all day. Here we go. We move into your groups. We'll take about 5-6 minutes. Okay? going to take about 2 more minutes. About 2 more minutes. All right. All right. We'll bring it all back together. Let me ask you a question. How many of you learned something about somebody today already? Great, great. I hope more of that continues to happen. What I want to do actually is I want us to take a few minutes here and I want to hear from each group, okay? And what I want to hear from each group is the answer to that third question. Did anybody not get to the third question? We got a couple groups. All right. So 2 groups. Is there more than 2 groups that didn't get to the third question? You got part of it? Okay, we're gonna roll with it. We'll see, and y'all can chime in. We'll work from this side of the room to this side of the room, and y'all got a few extra minutes to think about it. And then whoever your spokesperson is just gets the answer for everybody. Is that fair? No, it's not, but we're going to go that way. All right, so here's what I want to do. We'll start at this table right here, and I want to hear, what is it about your faith journey that you would like for others to know? If you want to give me one thing per group, and I know it's hard to kind of pare it down to one, but we'll start with one and see how that goes, okay?
God would take someone like me and let me do the things I never thought I would do.
Wow. So that God would use you.
Yep. In ways I never imagined.
So God has used you. Yeah. So they didn't teach us writing at NC State, all right? What they did teach us is a whole lot about how to talk. Okay, and so I got that part that I'm still kind of trying to shape, but I feel like I'm a little better at talking than writing, and so bear with me on that. But we're gonna reference back to some of these things occasionally as well. Let's go right here next. One thing from you, what you want others to know?
All of ours, what I was able to boil down to one was allowing for God to continually use us.
So that God's used you. Continually.
Not to say no.
Okay. So similar. It's good. All right, let's go to the table right behind you.
collectively, it's just the importance of how important a spiritual family is and our relationship with God combined.
So relationship with God and spiritual family. It's great. And if you have something, when I come to your table, if you have something that somebody else has already said, just tell me that. We're going to indicate that on here as well. So, back here.
We talked mostly about the impact that God has had on us in different seasons of our life and that he can call us in any season.
That's good.
And sharing that testimony is the faith part. It's what we get to do, is talk about those things.
That's good. So God has impacted you in different seasons. And probably in different ways in different seasons, I would imagine, too. Right? That's great. All right, next table here.
That every time that we have made a step or leap of faith, God has been there and come through.
Wow. God has come through. In every step. You know, when you just pause and think about that for a second, you know, they say hindsight's 20/20, right? And this is why it's a good exercise for us to think back at times on our own journey in our own lives. But sometimes in the middle of those seasons, it doesn't feel like that's true, right? There's challenges to it. I'm sure in the current season that you're in right now, for some of you in this room, it doesn't feel like that's necessarily possible right now. Feel like it. We can know that God's faithful, but it may not feel like it in the moment. But then once we get on down the road a little ways, and we look back, we're able to see the ways that God worked that we never imagined, that we never expected, maybe even that we never wanted, but that He's proven, right, how good that is. Such an encouragement, such an encouragement. Let's go to the next table right here.
As a church, we'd like for others to know that we're more than just a community, but we're a family, that we're there for each other. Everybody goes through difficult times, but we always have others in the church to help one another out. And spiritually, physically, all our needs are met with our community.
That's good. That's good. We'll go here next.
Our group did an excellent job on the first two questions, and in so doing, we didn't get to the third one. So I'm speaking for myself. First part is that there's been some unanticipated turns, both good and bad. And the other thing is the absolute stability and faithfulness of Jesus Christ.
So the faithfulness of God through different, we'll call it seasons. You use the word turns. And good and bad, right? Good and bad. Let's go to the table right here in the middle. I'm trying to buy y'all some more time. I know y'all needed it too. I'm sorry. But we'll go to this next one here.
Well, ours is that it's never ending. And until we take our last breath on this earth, we're part of that faith journey here. And then after we take that last breath, the journey still doesn't end.
That's good. Faith journey never ends. You know, you think about at times the world that we live in and the struggle it is to just watch the news even, right? And it feels like there's so much challenge in front of us at times, but to have a hope in the middle of that, right? What a rich thing for us to have. All right, let's go to this table right here.
God loves us, therefore we love others.
So good. God loves us. Therefore, we love others. Great, great, great truth, right? It's a great truth. Let's go. Right behind you there. Paul's going to get a workout today, it looks like.
To deepen our faith and help others along the way, or to know, if you want to put it down, to know God and make Him known.
Making him known to others. It's great. It's great. Let's go right here.
Well, we would like others to know that we have found in our faith that God was there for us yesterday, and He's going to be there for us tomorrow. Thus, we want others to see that you guys stay with God the whole journey. That's what we'd like others to know about our faith.
That's great. God was there yesterday, will be tomorrow. It's a bit of a theme, right? The whole journey. It's good. All right, we got 2 more tables here.
Well, we would like God to know that even for longtime Christians, that it's a process and that there are times that your faith will be stronger than others and that God is okay with that. Even the dad with the sick child in the Bible said, help me with my unbelief.
That's good. Yeah, growth is a process. God knows this. It's not a surprise to Him, right? God's not surprised by sometimes the pace of our growth that feels to us maybe like it's slow at times. That's right. That's good. All right. You got all kinds of time. I hope you came up with something good.
All right. We didn't really talk about the third question, so this is just from my brain. The beginning moment doesn't always have to be big or dramatic. And then I also wrote, it's like bumper cars. The journey is like riding in a bumper car arena.
It's good. You don't have to start with something big, right? You know what your best next step always is? It's just one move in front of you, right? Your best next step is always, it's just a step. Not a jump, it's not a leap. It doesn't have to be fireworks and lights and cameras and sirens and all of that stuff. All right? Our best next step is always this. So let me read back over these real quick just as an encouragement to you. Okay? These are the things that you've said, we want others to know this about us. That God has used you in ways that you never imagined. How many of you feel that way? Yeah. That God has continued to use you. It wasn't just once and done, right? It wasn't like the college basketball trends. 1 year and gone, right? This was continual. How many of you feel that way? God continues to use you. The importance of relationship with God and your spiritual family. How many of you feel like that's important? Absolutely. That God has impacted you in different seasons. Different seasons God's impacted you, maybe in different ways. How many of you feel that way? Yep. That we are a family. How many of you feel that way? I get the sense of that, right? Just standing in the back of the room before we even started this morning. I got a sense of that. Watching the way that you interact with one another, the way you greet one another, the way you clearly care a lot about one another. God has come through in every step. Anybody else feel that way? Right? May not feel that way about your current experience, but certainly you can look back and see it, I would imagine. Faithfulness, the faithfulness of God through different seasons. Again, a similar trend here. Feel that way? Yep. The faith journey never ends. How many of you think that's important? You want others to know? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And I want to just clear up one maybe occasional misconception about conversations like this. When we're talking about generational dynamics and connecting with and engaging, developing, discipling the next generation, it's not at the expense of older generations. Right? This isn't like a replacement principle in the sense that one needs to get out of the way so the other can do or participate or engage. We never see that in the Bible. We never see the disengagement of a generation in the Bible, old or young. We see handing off, we see passing on, but never a disengagement, right? We don't see retirement in the Bible. It's not there. We continue to engage. We may engage in different ways, right? But in every season, the journey never ends. There's no end to it. And when we talk about generational dynamics, it can sometimes make us think, well, there's not a place for me anymore, right? Because we got to make room for the next generation, so there's no place for me anymore. I assure you that in each of your meetings, there's room for you and the next generation. Would you agree with that? There's room for you and the next generation. The faith journey never ends. God loves, and therefore we love others. How many of you are convinced that that's true? Absolutely. Knowing God and making Him known, is that a priority? Absolutely. You want others to know that about you. That God was there yesterday, He'll be there tomorrow, through the whole journey. Right? Do you see the theme here? Right? It's showing up over and over. Growth is a process, and God knows this. Right? The word we often see associated with God about this is patience. He's patient with us. He's loving, His loving kindness towards us. He's patient with us. And then finally, it doesn't have to start with something big. It doesn't have to be a monumental moment that changes the entire world to get started in this journey, right? And so one of the things that I see here over and over, okay, is you've talked about how God has used you, impacted you, how God has come through. We see that in faithfulness there too, right? That it's a journey, right? We see that it's a journey. It's an ongoing relationship, right? In different seasons we see it show up. The journey right here, right? Knowing God and making Him known. God loves us, therefore we love others. These responsibilities, right? But then right here again we see it's a journey. Yesterday and tomorrow, the whole journey. It shows up here. Growth is a process, right? It's a journey word. It's an ongoing thing, and it doesn't have to start with something big. What I see surfacing, even just initially as we talk about what you want other people to know about you, is that each of you two is on a journey. Each of your meetings is on a journey, and at the core of who you are is your confidence that God is faithful through that entire journey. If I was to summarize what I just heard from all of your groups, the big idea that surfaces in my mind is that God is faithful in every season throughout the whole journey. It just arose from every table in some small way. Even those responsibilities that God loves us and therefore we love others. Why do we do that? Because we want them to experience the faithfulness of God too. Why do we prioritize knowing God and making Him known? Because we want others to experience the faithfulness of God. It shows up over and over and over and over, and clearly you have a priority around those things in your lives. And I would just say, as an encouragement to you, that that's a good place to be. That's a really, really good place to be. Your confidence in the faithfulness of God is high. At every season of the journey, your confidence in the faithfulness of God is high. And I would encourage you by saying that that is a good thing. But why is it, and let's talk about this as a group for just a second, why is it important for us to know these things about ourselves? What do you think? Anybody, raise your hand if you want to share and answer that question. Yes?
Because we often get discouraged thinking we're the only one.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. If you couldn't hear that, we often get discouraged when we think that we're the only one, right? Am I the only one that still thinks God's faithful? Am I the only one that's seen God work in difficult things? Am I the only one that's committed to knowing God and making Him known? Sometimes we can feel like we're the only one. Like we're on an island by ourselves. Like we are the pioneer missionary that's blazing a trail all by ourselves. Right? And here's the deal. The Bible teaches us over and over, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, that we need one another. And this is just one of the examples of why we need one another. What else? Why is it good for us to know these things about ourselves? What's that? To help us grow. That's exactly right. At the core of every human being in every stage of life, right, is what I would call our spiritual center. At the core of every single human in every stage of life, at the core of who we are, right, is our spiritual center. What that is it's the place where everything that we do derives from. And if we don't understand the spiritual side of ourselves, right, then we are disconnected from that place that every decision we make is deriving from. If we don't know our spiritual selves, if we don't understand where we are at and who we are spiritually speaking, if we don't understand that spiritual center, the core of who we are, the Bible often uses the heart to describe that place. The heart is used to describe that place. It's at the core of who we are, right? Then we have a struggle with really understanding that. And I would say that that's the most important part of who we are. Would you agree? The most important part of who we are is that spiritual center, our heart, as the Bible calls it. And if we don't understand that, then certainly there's going to be a disconnect between who we really are and what we're doing. We're going to have a disconnect in our minds. And who we are will drive everything we do. Right? How many of you have ever made a good decision on accident? It happens, right? It happens occasionally. But it's not the norm in our lives. Right? And so those decisions that we make every day, they start somewhere. They start somewhere, right? This is something I try to teach my kids. You know, young kids often ask, when you tell them to do something, they may ask what? Why? Right? Well, I've flipped that on my kids. When they make a decision, good or bad, not every decision, right? That would be cumbersome. But big decisions, oftentimes I'll ask them, hey, Camden, tell me why you did that. Well, I don't know. Yes, you do. Think about it for a second. Why did you help your friend that way? In a bad decision. Why did you decide to do that? There's an answer inside of us, always. And so who we are, right, spiritually, right, can be summed up oftentimes in questions like these. And who we are spiritually will determine what we do. It'll always determine what we do. And so we've talked a little bit, and some of you already started kind of wading into the waters of the plural version of who you are, right, as friends. But I want us to actually dive into that end of the pool more deeply. Now, really, this was designed primarily for us to think about our personal spiritual lives, okay, personally. Who are you personally? But what I want to do is I want to turn the page to another set of questions, okay? And here's what I'm going to ask you to do this time. I want you to answer these 4 questions. I'm going to give you a little bit more time because I put a number on these, all right? So I know the first one might be a little bit more challenging. What are 4 things, and you're coming up with this as a group, okay? This isn't individual. You come up with this as a group at your table. What are 4 things that make friends unique? 4 things that make you unique. What are 3 things that people outside of the friends family need from you? What do they need from you? What are 2 things that you personally are passionate about? Right, so that'll get back to each of you answering that question more directly. And then what are 2 things that you, friends, are passionate about that people need? Okay? So 4 things that make you unique, 3 things that people outside of you need from you, 2 things that you're passionate about, and then 2 things that you're passionate about that people need. Okay? So again, we're answering these, for the most part, that third question is a little bit more personal, right? But most of these we're answering now collectively, right? As friends, right? As friends from across the state of North Carolina, what are things that are unique about you? What do the people outside of you need from you? And then that last question, what are you passionate about that people need? Because there may be a disconnect. It may be that they need this from you, but you're not passionate about it. Okay? All right. Any questions for the good of the whole before we jump into our groups? All right. Remember, we're still answering the question, who are we? We got 3 ground rules for our groups, right? Vulnerability, grace, and remember, it is a process. That's right. All right. I'm going to give you about 8 minutes. Okay, about 8 minutes in your groups. And as if you haven't figured it out yet, 8 minutes actually means more like 10, okay? All right. 5 meant 6, 6 to 8 meant 9. All right, you see the pattern. All right, here we go. All right, one more minute. One more minute. You're done. All right. If you're not on question 4, make sure you get there. All right. All right. Turn attention back this way and get started. Question for you. Did anybody see the typo? Some of you. Jeff saw it. Paul saw it. Okay. Thank you for your grace toward me as well. I will say, typically I'm asking that last question is 1. It would make sense, right? 4, 3, 2, 1. You see the pattern there? All right, and so I typed a 2 instead, and so you get 2 things today, all right? And so it works out even better for you. Hopefully it'll be twice as good. All right, so we're going to start on this side of the room this time, and we're going to go one question at a time. Question 1, question 2, and question 4 is what we're going to hit. Right now, I just want to hear on question 1. Why don't you share with me 4 things that make friends unique?
Open worship. We don't practice sacraments. We are baptized by the Holy Spirit, not water. And fire. We have the peace testimony and simplicity.
All right. I'm slow, so I'm going to need some of that again. I got open worship. Did you say, what about sacraments?
We don't practice sacraments.
Okay. And then baptism was what?
Holy Spirit and fire.
I want to make sure, if
Not
I
water.
put HS for Holy Spirit, is that offensive for anybody? Is that okay? I want to make sure. All right.
Okay.
All right. And then what was the 4th?
Peace testimony.
Peace testimony. Do this, if you don't mind. Could you tell me a little bit? I know everybody probably, I'm the only one in the room with this question. But
I'm going to pass that off to an actual pastor.
What's that?
I'm going to pass that off to an actual pastor.
All right, great. Who would be willing to answer? Just peace testimony, a little context for me on what that is. What's that?
Well, we have our Quaker distinctives, spells out SPICE, but it's simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality.
Right.
But Quakers traditionally have had a non-combative or non-combatant stance on war or the occasion for war, and we tried to serve in other ways other than conflict.
Yep.
Or being part of the fighting.
So this isn't a personal testimony, it's a general testimony of the Quakers. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That's what I needed. That's fantastic. I've read through the distinctives, but I didn't get the testimony piece of it. That's what I was asking. So fantastic. Thank you. All right, let's go to this table. Roger had the microphone, and Roger's got an NC State background too, so I know he's got to be a good guy, right? We talked about it a little while ago.
We also had open worship, but we have like how we conduct our business. We don't vote. We come to a consensus,
Okay.
Which can sometimes take years, but we usually get there. And historically, we thought Quakers were a little bit unique in our area for their involvement of women in leadership roles. It goes back a long time ago. We thought that was a little different than at least other in our area.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. All right, we'll go either one of those two, Paul. You decide.
Our background, our values, intentional worship, and being a living testimony.
Is there any one of the values or any component of the background that you would highlight specifically?
What Robert said, our Quaker testimony.
Okay, that's for both of those? For background and background? Yeah. Of how Quakers came to be, or just the longevity and faithfulness of Quakers? Great. Great. Fantastic. That's good. All right, this group here.
We had most of those too, but we also had the conscientious objectors. We brought that out a little bit more, and our simplicity in our churches.
Simplicity. I missed the one right before that.
Conscientious objectors. It's a part of the peace
Part
testimony.
of the peace testimony, okay. And let's do this. As we get to your table, if you had some of these other ones, indicate that too. Let me know specifically which one. Which other ones did you have?
Let's see, equality with women.
Okay.
And that part. And then we had the other things too with the open worship, everything else that everybody had said.
Okay. What about you all? Were there other ones that are up here that you had that you didn't say?
Not that, that kind of went, we said the role of the Holy Spirit, the open worship, that goes with that.
Okay. Great.
And we named our other two.
Okay. What about back here? I know we're going backwards for a second. Just want to make sure we indicate anything else that you had that was already said. Okay. Great. All right. Let's go to the back. And again, anything you've got that's repetition, go ahead and signify that as well.
Okay. Our way of doing business, apprehending the sense of the meeting as opposed to voting. Our approach to the sacraments, our worship, where we try to have a period of open worship where allow the Spirit to move with everybody. Also, our posture or our traditional stance on the role of women and race.
Great.
And last one is, we're pretty good listeners.
Listeners? Great. And you added race to this too? Historically.
Historically, we've done pretty good on the race issue.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Let's get this back table in the corner here.
A lot of ours have already been said. We talked about the importance of open worship and the silence and the need for that in our society. We talked about equality, both for women and on all levels of their society. And we talked about the sacraments and the understanding that is, we believe in the sacraments, but we believe it's a spiritual connection, not a physical property. So that was one of the distinctions.
Great, great. And at this point, we'll start to get quite a bit of repetition, and that's totally okay. I would expect that. If everybody's table had completely different uniquenesses or distinctives, all right, we'd be here for a while today. All right, so this makes sense.
The first thing that we had was a direct relationship with Jesus. There's no people to go through. Then seeing everyone as equal, not just race and gender, but also social class. The light is in everyone. And the peace and nonviolent testimony we also brought up, and standing up for social injustice, both historically and currently.
Had somebody mentioned that already? All right, next table. Right here.
We talked about the importance of continued revelation, that there is that of God in everyone, hearkening back to open worship, that we're not afraid to wait in silence and to listen, and that everyone is a minister.
All right. Next table.
I don't think we have anything to add.
Which things specifically did you mention that are already up here?
8 of them.
Any of them?
8 of them.
8 of them. Okay. All right. Which ones?
It's just the same things over again.
Okay. Just generally the same. Okay. All right. What about here?
Okay, we are all ministers.
Yep.
We had that one. Thanks, David. Yeah. The sacraments, no creeds, and the approval process.
Approval process
no
will be
voting.
no vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned creeds. Is that unique to anything else? Is something different than anything up here?
I can't see.
We'll just put it over here. That's.
Do what?
You said no creeds?
No.
Great. All right.
You can put a check mark beside each of the first 4.
All right.
We just like that table over there know we got it first.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Then our last group right here.
So the approval process you already have, but I would add the words that it is a discernment process, not a consensus process, meaning discernment involves the Holy Spirit in the decision-making, not just the people in the room.
Gotcha.
Open worship we included, which you already have. We added the query process, which is the asking of questions. Much as you did to begin this, that is a part of Friends historically.
Love it.
And then last, the clerk or the pastor, the clerk of the monthly meeting, what we call our business leader, they are the first equals. They are not superior to anyone else in the room. They do not voice their view unless they step aside to say, I'm speaking individually as opposed to the leader of this group. Either of those and all of us should identify as shepherds or ministers, which you have.
Okay. All people equal, that idea? Yep. Great. All right, one more.
We also had open worship, that of God in every man, and the 2 that we had that were uniquely different, Quaker marriage and the misunderstanding of our message.
You said the misunderstanding?
Yes.
Okay. Not Amish. Really? That's interesting to me. Is that common thought by people? Yes. What's that? Quaker oatmeal box. I mean, I get the oatmeal thing because of the name, maybe, but the Amish thing is really surprising to me. Huh, very interesting. So, we've got a number of uniquenesses that you've indicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 unique things, right? Those things that seem to have gotten the most traction in terms of repetition, open worship, no sacraments. These 3 things were mentioned several times: peace testimony, no voting, the discernment process, involvement of women, race, and I think down here too, all people being equal can fall into that on some level as well, which seems similar. Does anything up here surprise anybody? No? No surprises there? Is there anything that we haven't put up here yet that you would say, I think it's an important distinctive or uniqueness about us?
I think it's not no sacraments, it's no outward sacraments.
Outward. Good. I think I heard the word physical sacraments back here too, maybe as well. That's a good distinction. Good.
We talked about it a little bit, but our integrity, historically, and I think it's still true today, Quakers have a really strong integrity. Our orders
Yeah, I think that's.
Mike earlier said, affirm you.
Right.
The not taking of oaths.
Yep. That's good. That's good. All right, let's wade into question number 2. All right, 3 things that people outside of the friends need from you. And again, we're starting to get into, these are more generally agreed upon, right? There's going to be a little bit more subjectivity on this page because we're talking about things that you think should, right, or are needed by the people outside of you the most. Okay? All right, so we're going to start in the middle this time so you don't always end up being in the middle.
These are 3 new ones.
No tally marks yet.
The first is to know that there is that of God within everyone, which leads to the equality. If there's that of God in that person, then that's a valuable person and a child of God. Second, basic Christianity, that Christ Jesus, and this is exactly what George Fox said, there is one, even Christ Jesus, that can speak to thy condition. And third, a personal relationship with God. No priestly hierarchy required.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to go here next.
What we had was a clearer message about spiritual Jesus versus historical Jesus. Our peace testimony and coming to peaceful solutions.
Say that last one again.
Coming to peaceful solutions while keeping our integrity in Christ, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, absolutely. And the clear message about Jesus, you said...
Historical versus spiritual. There's that big debate,
Yep.
especially in the academia world.
Absolutely. Great. All right. Let's go right behind them here.
We also had peace testimony.
Okay.
And you can have a personal relationship with Christ, so that's up there as well. And we also want people to, outside of us, know that we're not a closed sect. There's acceptance, and you will have support through us.
Great. Great. Let's go right behind. Oh, yeah, we'll go here. This is good.
First, that friends provide a loving atmosphere, a place where anyone is loved, cared for, invited. Secondly, that in doing that it is a reflection of God's love, His shepherding of us. And then thirdly, that lead to salvation through Jesus Christ, through the preaching and teaching that comes through our meetings.
Great. Good.
We had the peace testimony also was mentioned. Wanting people to know that faithfulness is important to us, faithfulness to Jesus and ministry, and that we're gospel-centered.
Would that be similar to the basic Christianity? Because I heard you talk about gospel. Great. Good. All right, next one.
We just made a change. First, that people need and can have a personal relationship with Christ. Second, that we care. And third, people outside of us need to know that we are not a cult or a sect.
Great. Great.
I think we may have talked a little bit differently than some of the other groups. We have staying firm in biblical teaching, not swaying with the trends of the day. That historically Friends have led the way in social reform, and we are still continuing to do that, even though it sounds like a contradiction of staying firm in biblical principles and not swaying, but we've done both. And also a constancy in what we stand for as Quakers and in the community, so that
people kind of know what to expect from us as far as what we stand for.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We'll work around to this side.
People need our love, and it needs to be something intentional. We need to show them attention. People need to see integrity modeled. And thirdly, they need to know that we all have worth because we're all created in God's image.
Let's see. All people are valuable. Great. All right, next one.
Everyone needs a place to be still in our crazy, hectic cultural rush in our society. And so that we offer the sense of community, and kind of coupled with that is a sense of value and equality. So those.
What was that third one? I'm sorry, what qualities?
A sense of value due to
Value.
Equality and seeing all people with value and worth. So.
I don't see equality, but it fills in with that a little bit. All right.
We put love and respect and live what we preach, acceptance.
Live what we preach, firm on biblical
Trust and friendship.
Okay. Great. Yes.
No, all Quakers are not the same.
Now, when you say that, I would imagine we're not talking about varying outside of these distinctives, but you're talking about personalities and the way people interact with one another? Yeah, okay. So there's diversity in some of those, both beliefs and practices? Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. Which actually is a fantastic thing to talk about with those outside of the friends, because there's always an assumption, like there may be an assumption or a relationship or a correspondence that people think about with the Amish. There's an assumption that's made that everybody falls into one bucket that has this association connected to them. And so I think it's great to always talk about what those differences among people that are associated together are.
They Google what the Quakers believe.
Yep.
They may come up with just about anything other than what we are.
Yep.
So we have to explain to them that everybody is not liberal.
That's right. Well, and I think it's important, too, to note that the majority of people in our world today gather their information through electronic means, okay? How many of you have used Google in the last week, right? We all have probably on some level at some point, or most of us probably have. That is the first place that that most people go to gather information, which means when it comes to your meetings, where are people going to go first to find out these answers to their questions about who you are? Online. They may Google it generally, who are Quakers. They may Google it specifically. I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the Thomasville Friends meeting. Right? Somebody might ask very specific questions either way, and then they're going to end up, at some point, if they start asking specific questions, where are they going to end up? Your website. And many people in the church world have begun to say that our websites are the new front door of our churches. Websites are the new front door of our churches because, and again, this isn't purely generational. There are some folks that don't touch the internet, all right? I recognize that. We've got folks in my church that are just like that as well, right? But it's a very, very small minority. But the reality is most people recognize that you can gain information about people or groups of people through these online means, right? At some point, maybe, right, you're going to go online and try to figure out who I really am. Right? You might have already done that today. You might have done that leading up to today. Who is this guy? All right? Right? We go there to find information. And when it comes to engaging with a church or your meetings, it's no different for people. Right? But I will tell you that I'm convinced, right? A personal relationship will trump that most of the time. Where you have a personal relationship. What that doesn't mean is if they're your neighbor, if you've got a young adult family that lives next to you, and they want to learn about your meeting because they've heard you talk about it, and the extent of your relationship has been cordial correspondence across the fence or while you're in the driveway. That's not necessarily a personal relationship. I'm talking about more of a friendship. That will overcome, right, that direct line to the internet to find out answers about who you are, who your meeting is. Right? Personal relationship will often trump that. Right? But I think it's a great point that you've made. Right? There are a lot of different variations of Quakers. Right? And I recognize that there's variations to some degree probably even within this room. Okay? However, right, people are going to go there to try to find information. And so sometimes we have to overcome those things. I would argue that the way we overcome those things is through personal relationships, friendships that go beyond the surface. All right? Great point. Thank you for bringing that up. It's really, really good. Let's go to this table here. Others need from you.
Respect. Understanding. And we had a few others, but this one's probably the biggest. Communication. And communicating the gospel. On George's note, communicating who we are, and just flat out communication, because one of the reasons there are misunderstandings and misinformation is we don't communicate.
Yeah, that's right. Again, it's a one-way dialogue. They're just asking somebody who you are, oftentimes, right? That's good. All right, this table here.
We had basic info, so knowing who we are, acceptance, and integrity.
Acceptance and integrity. Good. All right, last table here.
We had our compassion, and we had respect, acceptance. We had both of those on one thing. And they need our invitation.
It's good. It's fantastic. I'll pause there for just a second and say this. You know, I think one of the challenges we often run into when it comes to connecting with the younger generation, and this is by all means, I'm actually sharing with you my own experience. Okay? So let me say that differently. One of the things I've struggled with, even when I was a younger adult, okay, is I struggled with this. I struggled to invite people to come with me to learn more about God with my church family. And there's a lot of reasons that we can struggle with that. All right? It may be because we are afraid of what they're going to see when they show up. Right? And I mean, if we're being honest, that may have been something we felt before, right? Oh, well, they're going to come and they're going to be the youngest people there, and that's going to be difficult for them, right? We may have felt that way. Or, you know, we feel a little bit, you know, maybe unsettled with some things happening. And so we're not so sure we want to invite people to something that we're struggling with ourselves. Sometimes the invitation, though, or my failure at times to invite has come down to my own lack of conviction and boldness, right? My own confidence level, right? It's not that others that I'm concerned of, that they'll experience, that's led me to not invite, but it's actually my own struggles or insecurities or lack of confidence, right? But there can be a lot of things that play into this, but the reality is, if we want to engage other people, we can't do it without this, right? We can't do it without this, because though, you know, it's interesting, I'm by no means a business person. I'm not a marketing professional at all. But in the church world, we often find ourselves with this question: how do we get people there? Right? It feels a little bit like a marketing question. And I think it's good for us to recognize nothing, no matter how much internet people use, in the same way that you want people to know who you are by talking to you, the one thing that will trump everything else every time, better than Facebook marketing, better than flyers, is a personal invitation. A personal invitation. And I'll tell you, where we're going over the next, several hours, but also in a few weeks, is without personal relationships across generational lines that aren't required, if you will, right? Not just your kids, okay, that aren't required. Without those, engaging this group of people will be very, very challenging. All right, we're going to talk about some of the generational dynamics after lunch. Who are the young adults in our world today? Who are the young adults in the United States? Who are the young adults in our churches, or who are ultimately in many places not in our churches? Who are they? We're going to talk about those uniquenesses about them. But however, it's really important that you hear me say, and what I love about this group is that personal relationship, I think, is what you want. When I think about the distinctives that I've heard you describe over the last 30 minutes, right? I mean, the peace, right? Everybody, the ground is level, right? I heard one minister one time say, the ground is level at the foot of the cross. Amen? Everybody wants a place with level footing. People want to be known and loved and heard from people that truly care enough to listen. People want peace. You could make an argument that there's some that don't. But inside, everybody wants that. People want to have meaningful relationships. People want, for the least of these, to be seen with value too. So many of these things that you're talking about will resonate with people of the next generation, will resonate with people of every generation. But there's going to have to be a mechanism in place to help connect and generate personal relationships, right, across these generational lines. We're going to talk more about that again after lunch, but I want to go ahead and point that out before we go further. This invitation piece will become incredibly important, but not cold calling invitations, right? Anybody ever worked in a call center where you had to call people? Not where you were just receiving calls, but you had to call people, right? So when I was in school at North Carolina State, my junior and senior year, I got a job on campus. And I worked in the call center of what they called at the time the annual fund. And so if you can put two and two together, I was calling alumni and asking them for money. Okay? I had no say in who I was calling. It was all generated by a system. I got a number, I called it, and I had a name. And I had a script. There was nothing enjoyable about that for me. I mean, it's hard enough to ask people for money that you know. But asking people that you don't know for money at dinner time, because it was always at dinner time, all right? So if you've ever wondered, do these people always call me as soon as I sit down for dinner? The answer is yes. It's on purpose. They expected you to be home at that point. The world has changed drastically in the last 20-some years. But point being, those cold calls are really, really difficult, and they're often not well received, right? You've been on the receiving end of them. And I won't assume this of you, but I at times have been not so kind to the people on the other end of that phone, right? And I should be, especially one who knows what they're going through. I've experienced it, okay? These personal invitations, right, can't be blanketed, can't be general, right? It's the personal side of that that's going to make all the difference, right, as we start moving forward. All right, quickly, before we break for lunch, let's do, I know I have 2 up there, but I'm going to go with my grammar and not my number, all right? I want one thing from each table that you're passionate about, right, you being friends, that you're passionate about that people need, all right? We'll start right here. Jesus. Anybody else agree? Yeah, I'm with that one. I like that.
Everybody can talk to God.
That's good. Would it be okay for me to summarize that as access to God? Is that good? Good.
Learning to adjust to bring people in so they can know Jesus.
Okay. I like the way that you snuck like 3 things into that one. That was good. That was clever. Awesome. All right, back here.
Offering a place for people to be still and hear God.
Silence and simplicity.
Seeing the light in each person.
When you say the light, you're talking about God.
Yes.
Great. Great.
We think that people need to know what church really is.
Great.
All right, we're probably about to get in trouble, so here's the grace part we need. We changed the question. We said what are 2 things friends should be more passionate about that people need?
Fair enough.
And we said discipleship and outreach.
Great.
Still yours again, Mitch. Need.
Now, see, when you rewrite the question, you get 2 answers. Take note of that. That's good. Good job, Jeff. All right.
Relational and missional.
Great.
Passion for seeing others accept Christ.
At this table, we came to the conclusion that Quakers are very passionate about is furthering education.
Now, when you say that, are you talking about discipleship type of education or education more generally?
Well, the majority of our friends' meetings started off at schools, and education has always been important to Quakers.
That's great. That's great. Did we get everybody?
That our personal relationship with Jesus Christ is a continued revelation on our faith journey that there is that of God in everyone.
So you got 4 things in. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
He's a minister.
And then I'm going to put access to God, God in everyone. I thought that was up here. All right. I'm going to list it as 2, though. All right. That's great. All right, anything on this list that's surprising to anybody? So I'll read them back to you so you can think about that for a second. A passion, again, the question is, or a version of the question is, right? Something you're passionate about that other people need. Jesus, access to God, learning to adjust in order to bring people to Jesus, a place to be still and hear from God, silence and simplicity, seeing God in each person, to know what church really is. People need to know that about you. Discipleship and outreach, relational and missional, a passion for seeing others accept Christ, furthering education, and a personal relationship with Christ that is a journey, and God is in everyone. Yes? Uh-oh. Well, we don't want to leave you out.
So I'm going to do 2.
You can do 3. Why not? You know?
Written Word of God
Good.
and prayer.
I'm glad we didn't leave you out. Prayer. Great. So the first question that we are trying to answer today is what? Who are we? Right? Who are we? And what I've heard from you, in addition to some of the unique things that you described about yourselves, right, that others might need to hear from you or know from you, right, is an incredible list of what I would argue are highly attractive things that make you unique. I mean, I look at this list and I'm unbelievably encouraged when I think about the uniquenesses of this group of people and your meetings. And then when I think about what it is that you are desirous for other people to know about you, one of the things that I think is I'll call it a lost art in our world today, is humility. Anybody else agree? Right? There is a lack of humility that's often found in many places in the world. And at times, I think it comes in the church because we try to rubber stamp principles from the world onto how we operate as churches. Okay? What I see right here is the opposite of that. There's a humility, a desire for others to know something that you believe will change their world, change their lives. Not just through current, present moments, but for eternity. And a desire to show compassion and invite people into this personal relationship with God, to demonstrate and talk about, but more so to demonstrate what peace is, what it looks like. Right? How to be accepting and loving. And then when I think about those things that you say you're passionate about, that the people outside of you need, what I find is what I would say, your heart. Right? These are things that you recognize organizationally, right? As Quakers generally are unique about you. These are things that you believe, okay, these people outside of us need to know these things. This shows me your heart. And so I'm going to say a sentence with a whole lot of commas to tell you what I've heard from you this morning is the answer to the question of who are you? You are people who are passionate about Jesus, others having access to God, introducing people to Jesus, creating a place of peace and serenity and stillness and simplicity, seeing God in every person and helping them see that in themselves, demonstrating what it's like to be a part of a church family, about helping people grow and introducing people to Jesus, about forming meaningful relationships and helping those who are in need, seeing others introduced to Jesus, about helping the whole person, not just one part of them, through furthering education, introducing people to Jesus, people seeing God in them, passionate about the Bible, and you're passionate about prayer. I don't know about how y'all feel about that, but I wish that sentence described my personal life. I wish that described my life. None of us are perfect, but we all have the same need. And at the heart of who you are is a beautiful picture of what everybody needs. It's a beautiful picture of what everybody ultimately needs. Here's my question to you before we wrap up for lunch. Do the people outside of you know this about you? Do they know this about you? Not rhetorical. Raise your hand. I'd love to hear from you. And if they don't, why not? Right? I don't want to make it too easy. Not yes or no only. If they don't, why not? What would you say? How many of you would say yes? The majority of the people outside of us know these things about us.
I would say some people do and some people don't. I need to concentrate on the don't.
That's fair. All right, well, let's zone in on the don'ts for a second. Why do they not know these things about you?
I would say where I grew up and also where I'm currently working at is I think majority of people in our community that are not in our church, oh, there's another church in the country.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people outside of the church generally lump all of us together and say, oh, it's those people, right? No doubt. Why else?
I think it's a lot because of our quiet peace testimony.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to stand up for what we believe.
Wow. I don't know if everybody could hear that, okay? But it may be, she said, because of a quiet peace testimony and not always standing up publicly and loudly, because I know you stand up for what you believe. I know you're convicted deeply about these things that you hold to, right? But you may not stand up loudly and publicly and declare those things, right? And here's what I want to tell you. I in no way, shape, or form want to encourage you to not be you. No way, shape, or form. I just told you. At the heart of who you are is what everybody needs, right? Your distinctives, you don't need to throw them out the window, right? And we're going to talk about that later on this afternoon, about some of the challenges that are in front of you as you begin to think about how to engage the next generation. What's challenging about that to some of the barriers that you have in place, to some of the boundaries that you've rightly put in place around your convictions? What do you do with that, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that. What else? Well, why is it that people don't know these things about you? Yeah.
I would say as we get older, our circle of influence sometimes gets smaller, and we don't get outside of our normal friendships.
Yeah.
And so maybe we as a church need to get new friends that are outside the church. I'm throwing myself under the bus. We tend to hang out. I tend to hang out with people that I've hung out with for a long time.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they're within the church. And if you're going to reach outside the church, you need to branch out.
You know, I don't think you're throwing yourself under the bus, and I don't think you're, discrediting anybody in the room, because I think that's a pretty large reality for most people in the world, right? Right? We get smaller and smaller circles. Now, what's interesting is that today, right, people can jump on a device or jump online and get this skewed perspective on the size of their circles of influence, right? We call it social media. Right? All of a sudden, we're connected to lots of people. All right, I'll keep going back to this because it's where I talked about personal relationship. Right? Those aren't personal relationships. They may be, but it's not a given, right? And I think sometimes we get the perspective that my circle of influence is much larger than it actually is. Well, if we define circle of influence as the extent of your personal friendships, how large is it then? Right? And I think that's where it becomes challenging. Let's do one more. Yep.
It's easier to talk about the loss Purdue Boilermakers just had,
Yep.
or the Carolina Panthers,
Yep.
or my golf game, than it is about Jesus and my faith.
Absolutely.
It doesn't that much.
Yeah.
And on Rusty's note, Stephen, you're looking at people that have given up a Saturday to come.
That's right.
There's a whole lot of others in our meetings that we love
Yep.
and love us.
Yep.
They kind of become kind of pathetic.
I get it. And I will tell you this. Again, we're going to talk more about it in a moment, but after lunch, you're not in a unique situation. Right? The number of Christians in the U.S. that share the gospel regularly, that talk about their faith regularly, is so unbelievably low. right? Because it's the 20% represented in this room, right, that often are doing the majority, the 80%. You all know the principle, right? And it's true, right? But it's so much easier. However, I would say that there's an opportunity in some of those things we do like to talk about, right, that may begin to help us build some bridges. So we don't want to lose that. However, it's got to have an end goal of getting to the nature of talking about who we really are. It's good. All right, I'm going to press pause, all right? And that's part one. On there, you see 3 parts and an extra section, okay? We're going to do our best to get through all of it today, I promise, okay? We may not quite, but the good thing is we've got some more time in a few weeks as well to hit on some of it. Is there instructions on lunch right here?
Thank you, Stephen. My name is Greg Creed. I'm the pastor here. And